Hello, BookTube. I've got a little bit of mail for you here. I think it will probably be our last foray into mail for 2023. The publishing world is largely going on vacation, as well they should. They work really hard. Christmas Day falls on a Monday. No one's expecting you back in the office on the day after Christmas. You'll still be traveling on the day after Christmas, which means, and also federal holiday. The federal holiday will be observed on the Tuesday, not the Monday, I would think. Which means that you are going to be expected back on a Wednesday, and New Year's Day is on a Monday. So I don't know that I'm going to hear much from the publishing world for the next 2 weeks, for the next 10 days. And that's just as it should be. It's going to mean that the last holdouts, the people who maybe don't keep Christmas, I myself don't keep Christmas, so there'll be people who will be in the office. I'm still getting emails from them. They're happy. They're not miserable, Ebenezer Scrooge misanthropes at all. Some of us just don't keep Christmas. So they'll be there, and they'll be sending out the odd book, but they're not alone. They need the people in the loading dock. They need the people in the mailroom. They need the people in the, UPS, and those people, they're hardworking too. Americans don't get many holidays, so the world is shutting down. So I don't imagine that I'm going to get much mail between now and the end of the year. So why don't we just call it for today? We've got a couple of packages and a periodical. We'll just call it and see what we have. It won't be much. It'll all be 2024. The periodical is the New Yorker. We have the ordinary people walking around, and then this weird stained glass fantasy world below. This is a dismaying issue of the New Yorker because this is essentially Wordle conquers the New Yorker. This is an issue largely given over to games and puzzles. There are a lot of cartoons. See, God help us. There are a lot of cartoons as well, a lot of them, and some of them are fairly, panel by panel ornate, so that those will have worth to them, but this is essentially a wasted issue of the New Yorker, unfortunately. But it did have a letter that was of interest, a letter that piqued my attitude just a bit. The writer is writing from Kansas City, Missouri, and I knew before I'd read 2 sentences that the writer is not only writing from some places not on the West Coast or the East Coast, but also that the writer was a man. And this refers to an article that the New Yorker just recently published about the aftermath of a mass shooting. So those of you outside of America are largely thinking, oh, that weird American thing, although it just happened in the Czech Republic. But this is the letter. Jennifer Gonerman's excellent article about the consequences of school shooting depicts the tragedies that sometimes occur because of mental illness. Around 1 in 100 Americans has schizophrenia. As a licensed social worker, I find it travesty of justice that Kip Kinkle, that's the shooter, was found guilty instead of not guilty by reason of insanity, and respect the wisdom of Kip's sister, Kristen, who has recognized Kip's illness and has loved her brother unconditionally for all these years. In an enlightened society, Kip would have been confined to a mental hospital until he could be released under the care of state mental health professionals and monitored for medication compliance. Certainly there are many victims here, Kip's parents and the 2 students who died, the students who were shot and seriously injured, and many survivors. And among them is Kip himself. Letters like that seems perfectly mild-mannered, perfectly reasonable. I'm sure the author of the letter is perfectly reasonable, but they have the potential nowadays to send me into a white-knuckled rage. I know that sounds like an overaction, but they really do. When you are talking about mass shooting in America, I do not the hell want you to mention mental health. I don't want you to make a reasoned argument. I don't want you to mention it as an addendum. I don't want you to effing mention it at all. Don't bring it up at all. Don't let the words mental health cross your lips on this subject at all. Okay? That would be great. The way to avoid sending Steve into a white-knuckled rage would be, first, Don't use the words mental health on this subject. And second, get rid of the 750 million guns in this country. Melt them down. This country has 750 million guns. That is 2 guns for every single human who has any kind of breath in this country. Get rid of them. I don't want to hear anything about mental health as long as you can walk outside and literally trip over an AR-15. In this country. The problem in this country is the guns. And the minute you start talking about mental health, you take focus away from that problem. The problem is the guns. I don't know how much clearer I can be. Kip might be a victim, same as the people that he shot and the people that he wounded, but all he'd been able to do is throw spitballs at them. They hadn't been able, obviously not in his right mind, to get access to any kind of gun that he wanted and an endless amount of ammunition. He could have had the same mental problems that he had if he hadn't had access to all of that incredible, necrotic amount of firearms. He would almost certainly not have been able to do anything about it. Unless you're saying that the 21st century is somehow cursed by the gods, and that these behavioral problems didn't exist in the 19th century. Obviously, you're not going to say that. Obviously, you're going to say that the rough statistics of the occurrence of schizophrenia or anything else have been relatively stable in the human population forever. Obviously, you're going to say that. You're not going to say the 21st century is cursed by the gods. You talk about microplastics or something like that. You're going to talk about those percentages being mostly the same. What's the difference? Anyone can get a gun at any time. Any kind of gun you want. It is the easiest thing in the world to do. 750 million guns. I don't want to hear about Kip's mental health. I don't want to hear of your experience as a social worker about mental health. I don't want to hear you say the words mental health whenever they're in any way even remotely connected to the subject of a mass shooting, of a school shooting. All I want to hear you talk about is guns. If you're not willing to talk about that, then shut the F up on this subject. Okay? So, there you go. There you go. So you see, it irritated me all over again. I'm not accusing this letter writer specifically, who is from a gun nut state and is also a man. I'm not accusing him specifically. My anger largely comes from the reaction of the alt-right media in this country, who have now created this as a trained Pavlovian response. Not just from the politicians that the gun lobbies have bought and paid for, who always say this and never say anything else, but also from a large chunk of the population that immediately pivots to mental health when bodies stack up in an elementary school. That's what makes me mad. The problem is obvious, and it's not mental health. Anyway, let's go to the books and hope that they're not about guns. Let's hope that we can end our little mail thing here on a peaceful note. Let's see what this first one is. Okay, so I've got a lot of extra stuff that I don't need. What have we got here? Okay, the date on this is May the 14th. Why do you have blurbs from the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Wall Street? Oh, because this author wrote something else. So this author wrote Good Night, Beautiful Women. Do any of you know that book? Apparently it was hysterically praised. But this is the next book. This is, the author is Anna Noyes, and the book here this time is The Blue Maiden, with a kind of owl's midden heap there on the cover. Kind of interesting cover. I kind of like that design. So this comes out in mid-May, and it will be a $26 hardcover. And it's from the author of the celebrated story collection Good Night, Beautiful Women. And this is the author's debut novel. That is a standard thing that many practitioners of contemporary fiction will get. That's the kind of deal they'll get. We want your debut novel and your debut collection of short stories. And then you do an interview for the Paris Review, and Bob's your uncle, and you go on to teach. And hopefully we never hear from you again. And this follows 2 sisters growing up on an isolated Northern European island in the shadow of their late mother and the devil, with a capital D. It's 1825. 4 generations after Burgund Island's women stood accused of witchcraft under the eye of their priest, now long dead. In his place is Pastor Silas, a widower with 2 wild young daughters, Beata and Ulrika, The sisters are outcasts, imaginative, oppositional, increasingly obsessed with the lore and legend of the island's dark past and their absent mother, whom their father refuses to speak of. As the girls come of age, and the strictures of the community shift but never wane, their rebellions twist and sharpen. Ever-capable Ulrika shoulders the burdens of keeping house, while B, alone with unsettling visions and impulses, hungers for companionship and attention. When an enigmatic outsider arrives at their door, his presence threatens their family bond and unearths, piece by piece, a buried history of shocking ends. All the while, Bergon's neighboring island, the Blue Maiden, beckons. Hence the title. Oh, it's the name of an island. That's interesting. Storied home of witches' Sabbath and Satan's realm, its misted shores veiling truths the sisters have spent their lives searching for. A Nordic Gothic, that's what the pub sheet is calling this, a Nordic Gothic, laced with the horrors of life in a patriarchy, but both hostile to and reliant on its women. This book is a starkly beautiful depiction of lost lineage and resilience. Okay. All right, I was on board until it was revealed that the mysterious stranger who comes to Bergon's island is not the devil. He's me. And by that I don't mean a man, a cishet white man. I mean me specifically. He's Steve Donoghue. It's going to be revealed that he's Steve Donoghue, that I am the villain of this book. We will see. If this is a story of an isolated island, a repressive patriarchy, that would certainly be true, and these daughters kicking their heels against that. And maybe the reflection is that historically the witches of Bergon's Island have always been women who hated that system and could not escape it, and that is the manifestation of that. Okay, that would make for some very interesting reading. I've seen that done before, and that's usually been done well. There are two caveats here. One, since sorcery is involved, witchcraft is involved here, if the young women, Ulrika and B, if the form of their rebellion and their drift into witchcraft involves killing animals, well, then they're not sympathetic characters anymore. And B, I know I will say this. I know I'm speaking. I know I'm not telling you anything that I haven't said before. The devil isn't real. I'm really hoping that the Blue Maiden, that sister island, is not a place where magic works. I'm hoping it's a place where women have traditionally escaped Bergon's Island to form a community of their own. That would be nice. Not that the stranger is the devil. The devil is not real. If the devil is real, then prove it to me. And also that maybe that the Blue Maiden is not a place where magic works. That would be great. But it's a long way off, so I don't need to worry about it. In the meantime, I wonder how many of you read Goodnight, Beautiful Women. Did any of you read that story? It seems like everybody liked it. I don't think I read it. And then let's see here. Then we'll do this next one, and we'll be done. This next one is a bit of a problem. I've noticed publishers doing this. They send me these white things, but they are taped. So they're an irritation to open. I guess because people are worried that they're not made very well. Maybe people are worried that they're just going to pop open in mail and the book will pop out. I'd rather they tape it and be sure. What is this next one? Okay, this next one comes out in April, so these books are a long way off. I don't need to think about either one of them. This is by Angela Garcia, and it is called The Way That Leads Among the Lost, Life, Death, and Hope in Mexico City's Anexos, with a cover of birds outside a barred window. And this is the author is an anthropologist. This book is a beautifully crafted work of narrative nonfiction about the Anexos of Mexico City and California, informal and unregulated residential treatment centers where the vulnerable live and are often forcibly committed by their families to escape the violence of the drug wars and to treat their addictions and mental illness. That sounds horrific. Or at least it sounds like it would be open to horrific amounts of abuse. I did not know about Anexos. I did not know about that. A professor of anthropology at Stanford, Angela Garcia spent a decade visiting and researching these places where coercion, sanctuary, and violence are inextricably bound together. And this book is a moving and eye-opening literary amalgam that braids together accounts of the author's own on-the-ground ethnographic fieldwork with elements of memoir about her own coming of age. It's a serious, important subject. We really don't need to know that you weren't always happy as a kid. You're really not involved here. You're watering down the subject. What are you saying? You're saying that it's not important enough on its own. You still need to be center stage. Can I infer from that the author is very young? I hope not. We'll see. It can be done. It can be done. I'm a little touchy. It's a touchy video. I'm a little touchy about autobiographical elements in any kind of writing. In 2023, going into 2024, the whole industry needs to take a rein on that. It's obviously out of control in fiction, but even in nonfiction, more and more authors seem only able to sell their book if, in addition to the subject matter that they're talking about, they're also talking about, how long it was that they wet the bed, or how unhappy they were in grade school. It doesn't have anything to do with the subject, unless the author has actually spent time in an Exos. Then it would matter. If it doesn't, anyway, let's see. A deeply thoughtful and revealing book in the tradition of Catherine Boo's Behind the Beautiful Forevers, or Adrienne LeBlanc's Random Family. This book grapples with urgent questions around themes of family, violence, love, precarity, and recovery, while shining a light on a phenomenon that many readers in the United States either aren't familiar with or don't fully understand. Yes, well, I would like to see more of that phenomenon. Absolutely. Now I'm wondering if there are books devoted to it specifically, rather than the time you stuck your finger in the toaster. But just that subject, not you at all. A truly unique and powerful work of literary nonfiction, this is the first book to be released by a trade publisher from this award-winning rising star anthropologist. We're excited for you to read it and look forward to hearing what you think. Okay, so this comes out in April. It sounds fascinating. It's a long way off, so neither one of these things are anything that I need to think about. But now you know about them. So contemporary fiction with a what was it called again? Nordic Gothic. And also nonfiction, a memoirist nonfiction about a Nexos in Mexico City. Do any of you know about this phenomenon? How amazing. So not bad. Not bad in terms of our last mail haul. This will be our last mail haul. That and a little yelling about the New Yorker. That'll be enough. That's enough for us to wrap it up. So I'll wrap this up for now. I want to thank you all, of course, now as every year, for being patient enough to go through my mail with me. It's every senior citizen's dream to have somebody go through the mail and listen to them talk about it. That is just lovely. That has been wonderful all year long. We've had a lot of fun. These mail hauls, fortunately, again, I'm preaching the converted here because you all get me. You all know my initial reactions to books are not my considered reactions. They are not my finished reactions. They certainly aren't the reactions of a review. I am reacting in the moment with you. Hopefully in an energetic way, hopefully in a funny way. I think we've had a lot of fun opening the mail this year. It lets you know what's out there. You know already what I'm saying. I don't even need to make the disclaimer anymore. You know already I am a professional critic. My responses, my judgment on a book is not my first reaction to it. My first reaction is usually me going for what one uncharitable friend referred to as Borscht Belt humor. You all know that, and that has been wonderful. That has been absolutely wonderful. And also in 2023, as in 2022 and 2021 and 2020 and 2019 and 2018 and 2017, 2016. In 2023, I have also delighted a number of you because sometimes I get a book and it causes me to squeal. These weren't squeals. They do seem interesting, but there were no Steve squeals here. But 2023 has had its share of them, and that's been wonderful. So this wasn't a huge mail haul, but it's a perfect opportunity for me to thank you. For me to thank you very much for rummaging through my mail with me. That has been delightful. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.